In April 1936, 27 British schoolboys from the Strand School in London set out on what was supposed to be a springtime hiking tour through Germany's Black Forest. They were led by their 27-year-old German teacher, Kenneth Kiest, who had promised a scenic 10-day adventure. But within hours of setting off, the group would be caught in one of the worst snowstorms the region had seen in years, an event that would end in tragedy and a decades-long cover-up. From the beginning, the signs of danger were clear. The boys wore summer clothes, shorts, light jackets, no gloves. Kiest hadn't checked weather reports, ignored advice from local hostel workers, and carried an inadequate map. He also dismissed suggestions to use the tram or cable car to shorten the journey. Instead, he led the group on foot, straight into worsening weather. By mid-morning, sleet had turned to snow. The group encountered several locals along the way, woodcutters, a postman, and an innkeeper's wife, all of whom warned Kiest to turn back. One urged him to take shelter at a nearby hostel. He refused. "We'll manage," he said, and kept marching the boys deeper into the storm. By afternoon, the group was exhausted, trudging through snow up to their knees. Some of the youngest boys began to collapse. Still, Kiest pressed on, convinced they could reach a village he'd spotted on his map, Hofsgrund. But he had the wrong map. To get there, they would have to climb a brutally steep ridge, the Kapellenwand, in near-zero visibility and sub-zero temperatures. As night fell, disoriented and freezing, the group splintered. 17 of the older boys broke off, some say to seek help, others believe they simply abandoned the younger ones. Kiest, lost and confused, led the remaining children in the wrong direction, away from Hofsgrund and deeper into the forest. Several boys collapsed from exhaustion and exposure. Around 8:30 p.m., two of the older boys finally reached a farmhouse in Hofsgrund, barely able to speak. The villagers, realizing the horror unfolding above them, launched a rescue effort in the middle of the blizzard. Using skis, sleds, and their bare hands, they battled the storm to find the boys. Some were carried down unconscious. Others had already died. By 11 p.m., 5 boys were confirmed dead. More were critically injured. Local doctors traveled through waist-deep snow to reach them, but for some, it was too late. In total, 5 boys, all aged between 12 and 14, lost their lives. The very next day, the tragedy was international news. But instead of being held accountable, Kiest was portrayed as a hero in the British press. He claimed the storm was unexpected, that he had done everything he could to save the boys. German authorities, eager to avoid conflict with Britain in the tense pre-World War II political climate, played along. The incident was reframed as an unavoidable accident, a tragedy that had somehow united two nations in mourning. Nazi officials seized the opportunity for propaganda. A memorial was held with both the Union Jack and the swastika draped over the boys' coffins. The surviving students weren't even allowed to attend. Instead, they were paraded in front of cameras in a staged football match with the Hitler Youth, a deliberate photo op meant to soften Germany's image abroad. Behind the scenes, however, German prosecutor Eugen Weisse launched an investigation. He interviewed witnesses, the postman, the innkeeper, the hostel workers, and uncovered damning evidence that contradicted Kiest's story. He compiled a 25-page report recommending Kiest be prosecuted for negligence. That report was sent to the British consul, but when a subcommittee in London convened to review the tragedy, the report was never mentioned. It had mysteriously disappeared. The official inquiry cleared Kiest of wrongdoing, praising his courage. One of the victims' fathers, Jack Eaton, was outraged. He had retraced the boys' path, spoken with locals, and knew the truth. He spent the next year demanding justice, printing pamphlets, and even confronting Keast in public. His efforts were ignored. Eventually, the British Foreign Office quietly barred Keast from future overseas trips, not to punish him, but to avoid legal complications. Without stepping foot in Germany again, he couldn't be prosecuted. And the German Ministry of Justice, though acknowledging he could be charged, chose not to pursue it. Eaton's crusade took a toll. He was arrested once for laying a wreath outside Keast's home while shouting, "My son was murdered." He died broken and unheard. Keast, meanwhile, went on to enjoy a quiet teaching career, his role in the tragedy gradually forgotten. For decades, the truth lay buried. The incident became a myth, a tragic but blameless accident. The memorial stone erected on the mountain once bore an inscription blaming the teacher for failing the boys. Authorities later chiseled those words away. It wasn't until years later that a retired German teacher, Burkhard Bandhauer, stumbled across the original prosecutor's report in a dusty archive. Shocked by what he found, he began piecing together the real story, one of arrogance, poor judgment, and systemic cover-up. Most of the boys had trusted Keast without question. They believed he would lead them to safety. But he marched them into a storm, ignoring every warning, refusing every lifeline, until it was too late. The truth was painful, but undeniable. What happened in the Black Forest in April 1936 wasn't just an accident. It was a preventable tragedy, one buried beneath silence, politics, and lies.